Hey guys, welcome back. It's Dave. I'm hoping to put together what some would believe maybe be my best video I put together, at least in a while, because it serves multiple purposes here. I'm really putting this video together to really touch on different types of audiences, and what I mean by that, the other day and actually one last week, I got emails from recent pace progression model purchasers who had both stated that they were new to horse racing. Okay, in fact, the one the other day had mentioned that he had just freshly got into horse racing, and he saw the videos online and was interested in just kind of getting into the pace progression model, the data, and everything like that. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to put together a video that really touches on things that we've touched on way back. I mean, I have over 200 videos in my library now, and if those of you that have been following for a number of years realize that we didn't start with just looking at numbers, okay, and looking at calculations in the very beginning. Even in the matrix system model, talked about very first in the beginning is taking a look at qualitative things about the horses, about the runners that you can identify that may help you with your selection process or help determine whether a horse might have an edge because of it before you even dive into any of the numbers. So this video is not only for the newcomers, it's also for the old heads who have been here a while, just to keep in mind, being that we've been touching on numerical data for so long now with these grids, from the pace progression model to the thorough capping model, which dealt with the thorough capping dealt with every single model thrown into one, including the Brohammer velocity, feet per second numbers. But that got to a point where that added a lot of time to the handicapping, since everything has been manual. So lately I've been going back to just the different types of pace progression model grids, and most recently, some playing around with some matrix system figures as well. So I never get away from any of my models completely. Okay, I'll go back. I'm constantly, when I ever have the time, I'm constantly throwing together different grids that combined certain portions of one model with a portion of another model, even to follow the figures. Okay, I've added that in at times to different models, but I don't have the time to manually handicap every race I play with throwing it in through all three models, follow the figures, matrix system, and the pace progression. It would just take too long to do that. So back to what I was saying here, we're going to take a deeper dive into the qualitative process. And if you remember, in the matrix system, I called this the initial scan. Before I even look at any type of numerical data, I want to see what type of qualitative factors stand out in the runners. Now, the first race here, this past performance here is on Kentucky Oaks Day from last week. But what I did is I downloaded the actual PDF version so that I can highlight on here. But I don't, as I mentioned before, I use the PP generator now, which you can't highlight on. But I just look and I see, and I just put the information into my grid. But let's take a look here. There's four factors I'm looking at in the most current grid that I've been playing around with, which has been pretty profitable the last couple nights that I've used it. I used it at Charlestown the other night, and I used it over at Emerald for like 4 or 5 races the other day. It produced about I'd say three or four 10-cent supers, and about a total of 8 races that I played. The highest one paid like I think $86. There was no, blow up the tote board payouts or anything, but it was enough to put me in the black 2 nights in a row using this particular grid. And I don't want to jump around back and forth, so I'm not going to show you that grid yet. Right now, I want to take a look at the 4 things I look for. Now, the first race I did already, or the first horse I did already, and what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the level, class level. I'm looking at this section over here with the top 3 finishers from the races it came out of. I'm looking at third, looking for turn moves. which I've discussed numerous times in other videos. And the fourth thing I'm looking for is the running style. Okay, so let's move down to horse number 2 and see if we can identify anything. This here is an optional claimer, 125,000, which is pretty much the most you're going to see in an optional claimer. And like I said, it was a big day of racing. It was Kentucky Oaks Day. But this horse here would still be coming out of a class drop. So I would identify that as a class drop. And I'll show you how I identify these factors on my grid. Okay, but right now I'm just going to show you what I'm looking at when I'm highlighting. This horse is coming out of a class drop. However, now, I would determine whether I was going to use that particular race as my pace line, and probably not. If I look at the way that race was run, I would not be using that race there as my pace line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move down, and I'm going to look at the next race. And that's the race right here I would use as a indicator. But however, this is a maiden race, so that would be identified as a level up. Okay, so this is not, despite the fact that this horse is coming out of a grade 2, I'm not going to identify this 2 horse as a class dropper. On my grid, I'm going to identify him as a horse that's moving up in class. The second thing I'll look for is the running style. Now, if you're using Brisnet past performances, the running style is given to you right here, but it's not always that precise, I've noticed. You're better off taking a look with your own eyes at the first call and second call, mainly the second call, and seeing where these runners like to be. Okay? Because when I identify the running style on my grid, I do it numerically, and I don't just identify as early, EP, presser, or sustained. I have sub-levels in there as well. So I use a 1 to identify an early, a horse that wants to be on the lead and has been on the lead for his most successful races. I use a 1. However, I would throw a 1.5 in there too if I seen horses that were successful just off the pace as well and not always on the lead. That would be a 1.5. So a 2 on my grid would represent a horse that likes to be just off the pace and has never shown any success on the lead. And a 2.5 would be just a little bit further back. I would kind of judge from there. Again, when I get to my grid, I'll show you what I mean by that. So I would look at this horse and I would say, okay, there's a successful race right there. He wasn't on the lead. He was just off the pace. And then same thing here. Here we have, he was in 6th place, 3 lengths out. So I would identify this horse as a 2.5. And I'll explain what I mean by this. It's a 2.5 to me would be a presser that's not really on the heels of the leader or the pace setter. That's going to be back a little bit. And if these are 2 races, successful races here that I look at, that I see. And if this race here was also a little closer to the lead, maybe 1 length off and 1 length off, I would just give it a solid 2. But I'm going to give it a 2.5 here. But I would not fret too much about as far as whether you gave it a 2 or a 2.5. Okay? I would just use your best judgment. And if you can't, just go by what the Brisnet is identifying it as. Now, the next thing I'm going to look for is over here in the race that I'm using as my pace line, which is this maiden 94,000 claim. I look and see if there's any of these 3 runners are in italics, such as this horse right here, the 3rd place finisher in that race. What that means is that horse came out and won next time out. Okay? So the more horses that you have coming out of a race that are winning the next time they run, the more competitive that race was that you ran in. Okay? So this horse finished 1st. Here, the horse that finished 3rd behind him actually came out and won next time. Now, there was 12 horses in that field. There's a good chance that there's maybe 2 or 3 more horses that came out and won, or they haven't ran yet. They're going to win because of the larger number of runners in that race. So I would identify that horse as a partial key race. And when I say partial, a key race is defined as a race that where 3 or more runners come out and win the next time out. Well, we only have information on the top 3 finishers. And this horse here was actually the top finisher. Okay, Table Flirt, as you can see in the line here. So he did not come out and win the next time, but he stepped up in class and do a Grade 2. Now he's coming back down to an optional claimer. On my grid, under my key column, and again, I'll show you my grid, I would identify this horse as a 1 in the key section. Why? Because one of these 3 came out and won last time. Now, if we had a race where... Now, here's an example right here. Actually, no, I'm skip that. That's not an example because this is the particular horse that won here. I was going to say Table Flirt, but he came out and won next time out. If 2 of these runners came out and won the next time out, I would put that at 2, which would make that even more of a key race to me based on the data I'm given. So there are 4 things I'm looking for qualitatively. I'm looking for the running style, the class, whether it was a key race or not, and then I'm looking for a turn move. In this case, there's no turn move, and I'll see if I can find a runner with a turn move, and I'll go over it. Okay, here, this horse would not get a 1, it would get a 1.5, because this was a good race down here, and he was just slightly off the pace, and he won on the lead. So for running style, I would go with a 1.5 and not a 1. This is also a class move, and I identify the class moves on my grid as a 0 if they're moving up in class, a 1 if they're at the same level, a 2 if it's a drop, but yet a slight drop, not a major drop, and then anything over that would be a larger, more substantial drop in class. I could go 3, I'd go 4. If I had a horse that hypothetically was dropping out of a Grade 2 race, and I was using that race as my pace line, and it was moving down to, let's say, a $30,000 claimer, that would be like a 4 for me on the class drop. So keep that in mind. I use different numbers to represent, but this in fact would be a 0 because he's moving up in class. A 1.5 for the running style. I look over here, and sure enough, we have the second place horse in this race came out and won next time out. So he would get a 1 in my key race column. And then finally, there's no turn move, so he would get a 0 in the turn move column. So I want to go and I want to find a horse that made a move on the turn. Hopefully I can find one. Okay. It's a small move, but at least it is a move. If I take a look here at these 2 figures here, first call to the second call. The start of the final turn is the 1, 2, 3, 4 counts back in the past performance line. The end of the turn is 3 counts back. So this here represents the start of the turn to the end of the turn. And if you notice, this horse went from 5th place to 4th place. He gained 1 placement and also gained 1 length. From 5th place out, 5 lengths out of 1st to 4 lengths out of 1st. So I would identify this as a slight turn move. For me, that's as close as I can get to like not being a turn move. So I would probably give it a 0.5 on my grid. A 1 would be a legit turn move. A 2 for me would be a turn move where the comment says wide on the turn. I would give it an extra point because if he went wide on the turn, it would be even tougher to make that move he made. And then a 3 for me would be a substantial move. Like, for example, 8th place out by 12 lengths down to 4th place out by 4 lengths. You know, that's an 8 length move right there from the start of the turn to the end. I might give that a horse a 3 or even a 4 if he was wide in the turn move column. And then I look at my class, that's a drop, or that's a move up in class, that would be a 0. This race here would be the race I would use as my pace line. There was no indication of a top 3 finisher right now. Maybe they didn't run again, but I'd have to give it a 0. And then finally, my running style in this case would agree with this as sustained. But he's only 2 lengths out here, so I wouldn't give it a full 4. I'd probably give this horse a 3 as far as his running style. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do. They're the 4 things I'm looking at when I'm looking at the qualitative data and not worrying about any type of figures or calculations or doing any type of factors. Those are the 4 things you can look for. And you guys, you could do this in a race. If you're short on time, you could just do a qualitative scan on a race and eliminate horses based on what you're seeing, or look for standouts based on what you're seeing as far as here as well. You got a horse that's coming off a significant turn move that looks like he may be the only off the pace horse in a race with a bunch of early runners who is coming out of a key race and dropping in class. I mean, those indicators right there tell you that horse there has to be, in my mix somewhere, somehow. All right, so let's take a look here at my grid, the current grid that I'm using right now. And that would be the matrix system grid with a couple additional factors added in. Okay, so running style, class, turn move, key race. Those are the 4 qualitative factors that I just went over in that little sample that I just showed you. These are my qualitative factors. These are not going to be calculated in any manner to affect the power rating or to affect any of these other factors, these are the quantitative factors. Here I have my target rating. The other matrix factor that I haven't used in a while that I added back into it was my target Briz or target buyer, depending on which PPs you're using. And that's simply the target rating from the race. In this case, that would be a 15, 16. That'd be an 84 for a target rating, plus the 87, which would be a 171. So if I throw the 171 in that grid, I have a formula in there that converts that to a rating out of 100. That would be an 85.5 out of 100. So let's say, the target rating I said was an 84. Let's say I went down and his ability rating was let's say an 86. And then I have the early ratings from the progression model off the second call. And then I have my final fraction converted to a rating. So let's say, for example, that was an 86 as an early rating and an 82. So now I have my numerical data. And then I also have my qualitative data as well. And I want you to see how this comes out in the AI model when I throw it in the AI. Let's just throw this from the other night. Charlestown, race 7. I put the distance in there so that the ChatGPT or whatever AI model you're using has the information on the distance. I copy it, and I will throw this into the AI model, and I'm going to show you what it's doing now. It's actually, and those of you that seen my most recent videos, you've seen this already, but once you train the AI and what the factors mean, it'll take over analyzing the race for you. You don't have to go and color code your grids anymore and determine, well, this horse here is dropping in class, but he's, his final fraction. This horse will, the AI model will identify everything for you. First it gives me a clean version of my grid that I just threw in there. Okay? And then it starts with my qualitative factors. Starting with running style. It tells me all the runners that are early speed. It says there's no true front runners in this race, so the pace could be possibly slow. What that does is that alleviates me having to identify all the running styles and say, okay, well, what's the pace shape going to be like? Is it going to be slow? It does it for me because the AI, as I mentioned before, has its own built-in knowledge of the whole element of horse racing. Okay, the more horses up front, the chances are for a faster pace. Where the beneficiaries could be somebody off the pace, so on and so forth. It understands class dropping. It understands that if a horse is dropping in class, that chances are it could come out running a little bit faster than it did last time. And so if you have an early horse that's dropping in class, okay, there could be a benefit there. I didn't have to teach this to the AI. It already knows it. Okay, it also identifies my turn moves. It says horses 1 and 3 have a slight move, which is indicated by a 1, as I talked about. Not significant, but it's still a turn move. And then the key race. We have 6 and 8 both exiting key races with one of the top 3 runners from the last time out coming back and winning. Now, based off of those qualitative factors, it's giving me some key insight now on 3 horses. And this is what I'm talking about, not having to sit there and study myself now. All right, well, it's telling me based on this information up here what it sees. It's telling me the 6 horse is dropping in class. He's a late runner. He's exiting a key race. He's got the top ER and strong late running, even though we haven't even gotten into the quantitative factors yet. And so on and so forth for the 1 and the 8. You guys can pause and read as you go along. Now it breaks down the race shape for me. It gives me a pace pressure score based on the amount of horses that, 1, look like they want to be up front, and 2, have high early rating numbers, like in the 90s, 94, 95. If I have 3 or 4 horses with an ER of 93, 94, that's going to score it's going to score the pace pressure as a very high or high. And it's going to tell me why. It gives me the expected leaders, closers to watch, and the main beneficiaries of this particular race shape. And it's telling me the mid-pack movers of the 6, 8, and the 1. Down here now, it starts looking into my quantitative data. Tells me who my target horse is, my ability horse, top early rating, top late rating, top target buyer, and the top power rating horse, which is the 6. And then finally, gives me a little qualitative summary of the race itself. And then I have it set for 6 contenders, because if I'm playing 10-cent supers, my last leg I have 6 runners in it. And this is the order it likes the 6 runners. Okay? Give me a second here. I'm going to pause. Okay, I'm back. Now, again, I was saying the top 6 contenders, 6, 1, 8, 3, 5, 2. And I look at the result of that race from the other night, and the 6 actually won the race and paid $18.20. 6, 3, 8, 4, 7. And so we had the 6, 3, and the 8. We had to try in the top 4. Okay, but it did hit the 6 on top with at a 7-1, 14, 8 to 1, 8 to 1 winner. Okay, and again, this video. I'm not looking to justify anything here result wise, but more or less, I want to make sure that you guys are not forgetting the old school tactics of looking at qualitative data in your races. Now, in the past, what I've been doing my other videos with my grids, the main purpose was to focus on the actual grid, but I always look at qualitative data either before or after I'm finished my grid here to separate. Well, what all I've done was I've taken that qualitative data now and I've added it to the most recent grid I'm using. Let me go down here. So now that the AI can help me identify and tie that information into my actual factors. And before I didn't have the AI looking at any of the qualitative information. I was looking at that myself and making notes of it while I compared it to what the AI told me about the qualitative factors. All right, so in a nutshell, if you're new to this, train yourself to identify the qualitative factors first. Okay? Learn to read the past performances. Understand what the information is being given to you here from start to finish. That way you know some of the things. I mean, there's obviously more. There's the workouts. I'm not a workout person. Okay? I'm not. There's a couple little things I use when I look for workouts, but there's nothing. It's not a big part of my handicapping. I don't look a lot up here. I mean, in the follow the figures, I use the top speed figures on the year, top on the surface and the distance. But for the current models, the matrix system and the pace progression, I don't look up here. I'm not a pedigree person. Okay, I don't follow bloodlines to know anything about the sire and the dam and what kind of distances they liked and so on. And I'm not knocking that information, but what I'm saying is I am looking for something that is time efficient. As you know, those who know me well, I look for something I'm going to be able to handicap a race. When post time it says 20 minutes, I know that I'm going to be able to get that race done in at least 15 minutes. So I have 5 minutes to throw it into the AI and determine how I'm going to wager. The more information you add into that, and then especially if you're doing it manually, the longer it's going to take to handicap a card. So make sure you guys are taking a look at the qualitative stuff. Then whatever grid you're using, tie that into your grid. Now I'm going to put the grids, the new grid. I already put it in my own download. I'm going to put it into the pace progression model download, and it's called Updated Matrix System. MA. The whole word is, but you can't see it all. It's Updated Matrix, and this is the particular grid you're going to see, and feel free to use it. Those that don't understand the matrix factors, I have a link if anybody's interested in the matrix tutorial. It's very thorough. It talks about every one of these. And it also has the factor of the Bayer cumulative or Brisnet cumulative factor that I don't have in this particular grid. Also, there's another matrix system factor. I'll throw this grid in there, and I'll also have the download for the pace progression model and the matrix system model for anybody who might be interested. You can click on that link, and you can get it for $19.99. It's a digital PDF tutorial. It's got over 100 slides, breaking it down step by step. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Any questions, as usual, comments, please throw them into the comment section. Email me, thoroughcapping@gmail.com if you need anything from me. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.